everyone, it's Mary and welcome to the Dressing Room Diaries. As always, I hope that you had an amazing week. Today at the Dressing Room Diaries, it is Fairy Tale Day and we're going to tell the story of Cinderella, Sleeping Beauty, and Snow White. But wait, if you think you know these stories, you don't at all. I'm going to tell you the original versions of these three classic fairy tales. And I think you're going to find that along the way to Happily Ever After, there were some pretty dark twists and turns and things you wouldn't expect, and things that are definitely not in today's versions of the stories. So I guess there's really nothing else left to do but get started. Once upon a time, in a land far, far away, lived Morty. Lived a girl named Cinderella. I think you know how this version turns out. Let's talk about the original and some of the key differences between the two stories. I think the most striking difference is there's no fairy godmother. How much fun is that? Not very. She gets a magic tree. Yeah, a tree. Go figure. And there's cute little mice that help her out. No mice for our original Cinderella. Magic tree, birds. So Cinderella's little helpers turn out to be birds. And the prince, well, at least in this version anyway, he's got to be a really fun guy because his party lasts for 3 days and she doesn't lose her slipper until the third night of the ball when the prince, tired of his lady love running away at midnight, decides to put the very sticky substance tar along the steps so he could catch her. But he doesn't get her, he gets a slipper instead, which then ensues the great hunt to find the lady that fits the shoe so that he can marry his lady. Unfortunately, it's not quite that easy to find a girl to fit the glass slipper. Eventually, they do make it to Cinderella's house, but her stepsisters get there first. And stepsister one, she's determined. So determined that she cuts off all of her toes. Yep, off with the toes. And she puts her foot in that slipper. But you can't cut off your toes and not have some blood, so they figured that out pretty quickly. Stepsister two, well, she's not fitting in that shoe either, but she's thinking, toes don't work, maybe I can get away with it if I cut my heel off. She cuts her heel off, gets in the slipper, but there's still too much blood, and it's clear that stepsister one and stepsister two, despite their gory attempts, the slipper doesn't fit and they're not the right girls. At last, of course, Cinderella gets to try the shoe on and it fits. She and her prince live happily ever after. But what about those stepsisters? In this version, it's not so easy. You know those birds? They peck their eyes out. The last thing that the evil stepsisters see is Cinderella and the prince driving away, and then they're blinded, pecked out. I wonder if Alfred Hitchcock happened to have seen this version. Just a thought. Just a thought. Tippy Hendren, what do you think? And she pricks her finger on a spinning wheel. Not in the original version, she doesn't. There's no spinning wheel at all. In fact, Sleeping Beauty pricks her finger on a pile of hay. Yeah, a pile of hay. Apparently a A bit of the hay gets caught under her thumbnail, causing her excruciating pain, and she passes out. But lucky for her, she is a fairy godmother. Unlike Cinderella, who got stuck with a tree. Pretty lame. Sleeping Beauty gets a fairy godmother who takes her body off to guard it in the woods and does a really lousy job at it, because the first handsome prince that happens to roll right up to that cottage has the first recorded one-night stand in fairy tale history and hightails it out of there in the morning back to his kingdom, where he promptly goes ahead with an arranged marriage. Whatever. Leaving Sleeping Beauty pregnant. It's not until she actually gives birth that she wakes up from her slumber and has a baby. Now, not too much in the original version is explained from this point on, other than to say that years go by and the prince, now a king, comes back through the forest again and remembers his good time cottage and finds Sleeping Beauty very much alive with his son. At this point, he owns up and does the right thing and takes Sleeping Beauty and his prince back to the castle. Yeah, it doesn't go over too well with his wife. Now, granted, it's an arranged marriage and these two don't get along to begin with, but she's still pretty pissed. So the queen, doing everything in her power, makes multiple attempts to kill Sleeping Beauty. Yeah, that's nowhere near what happens in the modern version of the story. But she tries to kill her. The king, he's had enough, doesn't like her anyway, puts the queen to death, marries Sleeping Beauty, his son becomes prince, and they live happily ever after. A little bit different, huh? Mirror, mirror on the wall,
Magic
who's the fairest one of all?
Who is the fairest one?
Famed is thy beauty, Majesty.
Well, it's not Snow White's mother, that's for sure. Yes, I said mother. In the original version of this story, it's Snow White's mother that goes after her. Not once, not twice, but 3 attempts to kill her daughter. So I think we should probably pick up with murder attempt number 1. At this point in the story, beautiful Snow White has run away from the castle due to massive mistreatment and is living deep in the forest with 7 dwarfs. Her mother sends her a mystery package. Snow White opens it up and it's a dress. What girl doesn't like a new dress? And Snow whips that dress on really fast and thinks she looks incredible until she can't breathe. See, this dress is magic and it just starts squeezing and squeezing and squeezing. Eventually, it's going to squeeze her to death by cutting off all her oxygen flow. It's a fairy tale. Just go with it, okay? The dwarfs come in just in time and rescue her. She survives murder attempt number 1. Well, good old Mumsy, she's gonna try this one again. Only instead of a dress, it's a comb. And as Snow White is combing her hair, she starts hacking and coughing and getting oh so woozy. The dwarfs manage to save her just in time as well. So murder attempt number 2 is failed. I would imagine, and rightfully so, Mom's pretty pissed at this point because she wants to be the fairest of the land, so she's gonna get rid of Snow White. Determined not to leave fate into anyone else's hands, she's gonna do this herself. Dresses up like an old lady, cooks up a poison apple, and off she goes into the forest to get this job done right. And she does, because after Snow White takes a bite of the apple, she keels over. She's dead as far as anyone is concerned. Oh, but the dwarfs, they're so sad because their beautiful Snow White has died and they just can't bring themselves to bury her. So they build a glass coffin, put her body in the glass coffin, and there she stays until That's right, another prince rolls by. Only this one, seeing her beautiful body, decides that she shouldn't languish in the forest and is going to bring her back to his castle. As he's picking her up out of the coffin, he's jarred and drops her body. Boom, to the ground. But that's a good thing, because out of her mouth springs the piece of poison apple, and Snow White wakes up. Now, I just want to have you think about this for a second. The dwarfs, they figure out the dress, they figure out the comb, and we've got a dwarf named Doc, right? Where did Doc go to medical school that he couldn't figure out she was choking? Hello, Heimlich. You know, what do we got? We got Doc, Brainy, Smarty, what are they all being dopey? I mean, I don't remember all their names, but clearly, if they could figure out the first 2 attempts, they should have been able to figure out the stupid apple. But they don't. Irregardless, Snow White gets her prince, and her mother gets an invitation to the wedding, and she's a guest of honor, because at Snow White's wedding, her mother gets a special gift. A wonderful pair of iron shoes that have been sitting in the fire, and these babies are red hot. The mother is forced to put the red hot iron shoes on and dance till she drops. Dead, literally. And that's happily ever after. Whether it is Cinderella, Sleeping Beauty, or Snow White, I think you can see that happily ever after can certainly change over the centuries, and that today's versions of these fairy tales are vastly different from the originals. I hope that you enjoyed today's Dressing Room Diaries, and we will see you again really soon. For Mr. Moriarty, who is upstairs being a little naughty, Johnny and Jimmy, who are down here with me, I'm going to say goodbye, and we'll see you next time on another Dressing Room Diaries. Take care. You ready? You good? Where's my bunny? What you doing? Huh? Good boys. Very proud of you. You were good.